this Cena heel turn is something that people are going to be talking about 10 or 20 years from now.
Let's talk about John Cena, the heel turn. R-Truth is very disappointed in his childhood hero, I'm sure, Stevie, but okay, before we get into what it is, are you buying any of these like so-called hints that John Cena was dropping that the turn was going to happen, or do you think that's all retconned to sort of fit the story?
Yeah, I think this is definitely 2020 hindsight type stuff because I would never think the number one reason I would never think Cena would turn heel, and it makes it awesome, even more awesome than what we witnessed, was this is his retirement tour. But I do have a theory that's obviously going to bring it back around. He's going to leave riding away on the sunset as the hero, as the white meat baby face, the white hat hero from the westerns. But there was no hints here, and you can create your hints. We'll talk about the lead up to it, but no, this was truly a shock. The number one reason besides the retirement tour, so 1A, 1B type of thing, is merch. Cena is still one of the top merchandise sellers. This was a ballsy move, for lack of a better term, by WWE, by The Rock, whoever's in charge of creative, and by Cena himself. He has to sell millions of dollars, if not tens of millions of dollars worth of merchandise each and every year. And being a heel, maybe it won't even affect anything, but a lot of kids look up to Cena and they still believe it's still real to them, damn it. And and this could hurt merch sales quite a bit. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I was just looking at the takedown, sorry, SI.com, 2025 Royal Rumble top merchandise sellers, and somehow they've listed John Cena at number 2 and number 4. So that's how you know he's selling a lot of merchandise. He's occupying two of the, I think they meant Alexa Bliss or something. I don't know.
But we're talking about minimum millions of dollars that WWE is foregoing for because they could have made retirement tour merch. Like, and they could still do it for the last bit of this because
But
I
that's
believe
why
you.
that's what I'm figuring. Because when I apologies for bringing up my video, but my theory is that they have the the
No, in theory, you would think with babyface heel, this might be an antiquated kind of like thinking from an older wrestler. My question would be, here's the one-to-one analogy. Is The Rock on that list of top merch sellers right now as a heel?
no, I don't think so.
Wow.
No.
But you know what I mean? The Rock being a heel, Cena could be a cool heel because everybody's been wanting him to turn heel for so long. Well, the fans cheer him like they cheered Roman Reigns as a heel. And Roman Reigns was a top merch seller as a heel. So I'm kind of walking back what I said. But in theory, it's a really dangerous move to turn a Cena-like character into a heel, and this creates a lot of interest to see what would a heel John Cena look like? Is it the Doctor of Thugonomics? Because I dare say people would enjoy that. Or is it a completely different type of corporate sellout Cena type of character?
Well, here's a question for you: Is one, did you hear anyone booing John Cena?
No, no, I didn't. I heard a kind of a collective gasp when it happened and a rumbling, but I didn't hear outwardly boos or trash being thrown into the ring. If I was WWE, I would have planted some people to throw trash into the ring and recreate that NWO Hogan thing from Bash at the Beach.
Two, do you think people weren't booing because it's 2025 and that's how it is, or do you think people in the stands were actually really happy they got to see a happening for their extortionately expensive tickets? They paid their money and they got to see one of the biggest happenings in WWE in the last 20 years.
Yeah, they sure as hell weren't there to see Travis Scott hurt Cody. They were there. I think it was shock, but it was also wow. This is something you're never going to see again. The Hogan thing is the last thing that was really on the level of what we're seeing with Cena because you have to have years, if not decades, of just straight up babyface. And people can say way back with Cena being so over the top cheerleader, like months back, that this seed was planted, but it wasn't. I believe right up until this happened, they were still kind of going back and forth. Is it going to be somebody else? Do we really want to do this in Cena's retirement year? When will Cena have the redemption arc? There had to be a lot of talks, and I think Cena, obviously, in the end, had to sign off on this because this is his career we're talking about. And but here's a question back at you,
Yes.
million different questions. Would Vince McMahon, if he were in charge, pull the trigger like this on a heel Cena?
Okay, right. Here's the difference, though. If Vince McMahon was still in charge, then would The Rock be on the board? And if The Rock isn't on the board, would any of this happen? Because there was a news report, I can't remember who originated it, and you know these dirt sheets, I mean, they've got less credibility than ever these days because everyone just seems to be guessing. But someone somewhere said, maybe it was a Meltzer thing, I don't know, that Cody Rhodes was initially the person who they actually wanted to turn to the dark side. And I believe Cody, or so the report said, in real life, Cody said absolutely not. And therefore, John Cena was plan B, basically. And then there was also a theory that maybe CM Punk was going to be a plan B, which I thought CM Punk would have been fantastic.
Yeah, that would have been a good choice, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that would have been the one thing that would have made the most sense as far as motivation goes, because CM Punk has never had that WrestleMania main event. Even on Raw, he referenced it very strongly. I've always wanted to be in the main event at WrestleMania. Whether he feels that personally anymore, that doesn't matter because we're talking about the character. And he would have basically the most to gain aligning with The Rock, because that is the one door that The Rock could open for him. And I thought Punk would have been a great person to put in that position, especially the way he lost, in fact.
Yeah, and in the end, too, you have Cena chasing Punk with a totally different look if Cena has to chase Punk as the champion, the corporate champion, wearing suits, not the straight, all this different thing, embracing the private jets and all the stuff that is not CM Punk, and Cena is trying to win the title back for the people up until his last match, which could still happen. I mean, we'll talk about the heel turn and we'll break that down and analyze it, but I will give a prediction of a roadmap that I believe will happen where Cena will get the babyface retirement tour. It might not be a year, but we're going to have, I think, some of the most fun creatively in WWE over the next few months.
We're not talking about Travis Scott now. That's going to be for the next segment, because that's all a segment on its own. We're going to also be talking about, of course, the segment itself and how it was laid out and all that kind of thing. But ultimately, I think you've already said it, and I think I'm of the same opinion, that I don't think this is a grand master plan over the weeks and months and even a year in the making. I've got the feeling that this was very, very last minute and rushed, because The Rock only returned as a weekly character, or pretty much a weekly character, maybe 2 weeks ago. And WWE these days, as you well know, Stevie, I'm sure everyone else knows out there, storylines are very, very slow and, dragged out to, get everything out of every storyline, or at least the major storylines are in WWE these days. But we went from The Rock randomly turning babyface and heel 3 times in a promo. Like, he's nice to the crowd, then he hates them, and he's nice to them and brings out Cody, and then he wants his soul. And then 2 weeks later, it's been paid off already. So I don't know if you feel the same way, but to me, that screams, this is all very last minute. And it doesn't matter whether if it is or not, it's been pulled off great. And that now there are so many tentacles that, like you were saying on the Patreon, for, you and Raven and the Pitbulls and Francine and Shane Douglas and all the Dudleys, you have this germ of a story.
Alfonso, Todd Gordon, all the, everything.
911. Yeah, that just sprouts so many ideas, and then they can all intersect back on each other.
I have a few points to make about this because this was definitely rushed. And my theory, my guess, my estimated guess, I don't claim to know everything like some dirt sheet people. They are now changing the formula where it used to be whoever won the Rumble, and in January up until WrestleMania, it's static. This is what we're going with. This person won the Rumble. We got to push this, build these matches up. They had very little build up to Elimination Chamber. I feel like they needed to really give the WrestleMania promotion a shot in the arm, and this did it. So now I think Elimination Chamber, they're gonna keep people guessing after the Rumble, and the Chamber is gonna be the pay-per-view. Of course, if people don't get hurt in the Elimination Chamber, the Chamber is going to be the one that really catapults the promotion for WrestleMania. Did you feel that way? This pay-per-view really set everything in motion for the WrestleMania matches.
I thought it turned everything upside down because I really wasn't excited about this WrestleMania whatsoever. I thought it was the most boring lead because Jey Uso and Gunther does nothing for me. Charlotte and Tiffany does absolutely nothing for me whatsoever. And then I just thought, all right, we'll. And then there's going to be a babyface Cody and John Cena, a double babyface. There's nothing to, there's nothing to chomp on. There's nothing to, get even remotely excited about, quite frankly, from that. And then all of a sudden it's just turned on its head. And now, leave the Charlotte and Tiffany and Jey Uso Gunther thing because they're their own universes. But now WrestleMania seems like the most exciting pay-per-view once again. So far out still, because this happened March 1st, and there's still, 6-7 weeks to WrestleMania, so there's tons of TV to, ratchet up the excitement even more.
Well, here's my question on that, though. Elimination Chamber seems to be, if they're going to go with this formula, Elimination Chamber seems to be the important pay-per-view to solidify WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm.
What happens to Royal Rumble now? Do you see what I mean? Are people going to go Royal Rumble?
It's half and half then, isn't it? Because it's 50% Royal Rumble, now it's 50% Elimination Chamber, so now they're as equally as important as each other.
They've done something I didn't think they would do, because that pay-per-view between the Rumble and WrestleMania was always a throwaway pay-per-view. Now, what it looks like is we're going to hit you with everything for that last push. Now the 6 weeks are, if they don't do record ratings in the next 6 weeks with what they have here, the business isn't a down cycle, because you can't get much different than what they've been doing than the Cena stuff. My only other point would be, why in the world can't you do this the other 10 months out of the year with the rest of the talent to a certain degree? Not that you can't replicate Cena's resume and the history and the meaningful heel turn, but you can take better care of each and every talent for the other 10 months out of the year. And then Rumble to Elimination Chamber to WrestleMania. My man, you'll be above 100 on that.
There has to be ups and downs, though. Really. You just can't keep it 100 the entire time. As much as you want to, I'm sure. It's
you
just
could
impossible.
rotate the focus of the roster and have certain roster members. You have enough people and enough talent, and you're always going to be getting more talent from NXT, AEW, now TNA. Dude, you got a lot. You can make each, say, quarter mean something and feature and test the talent to see. Drew McIntyre deserves his own run somewhere in the calendar year, right? Damian Priest. These are people just tossed to the side. Punk. Why can't we have the Summer of Punk leading up to SummerSlam? I'm just trying to throw things out there that each season of pay-per-views can have their own meaning and their own star that carries them.
I think they will. But I think this year it'll be
now
John
they
Cena.
will if they watch this show.
Oh yeah, I guess so. Let's talk about the actual shooting and the execution of the final segment. In fact, before we do, the Elimination Chamber itself, the end. Seth Rollins is eliminated by CM Punk, but he doesn't leave the cage, the chamber immediately. He then sneakily does a curb stomp on CM Punk as he's got his head outside, so he's landing, on the chamber floor, I guess. And then John Cena, and I immediately picked this up. John Cena doesn't even have that sort of crisis of conscience that a babyface might have. Oh, should I take advantage of this? Am I an idiot if I don't? Or it's not fair. No, he immediately sees CM Punk knocked out. He sees what happens, drags him in the middle, STFU, until CM Punk passes it out. Did you get an inkling that something was up right there and then, or did you put that to maybe an oversight in booking, maybe?
No, I didn't personally, but I can see now in retrospect that it definitely had something to do with it. Cena even planted a seed, if you look back at the press conference or the media scrum after Royal Rumble, where he said he's going to do what's best for business, which was a direct thing. That almost made me think, is there going to be a heel Hunter and Stephanie Authority gimmick, and he's going to be part of that, because that's exactly what they said ad nauseum at every opening segment of TV. But no, I didn't have an inkling that, because once again, I'm thinking like a worker. Your merch sales technically, and it could be, like I said, old thinking, because you make a great point. Maybe it doesn't matter right now. They're making money hand over fist, and people will buy merch for whoever's hot and cool and stands out now, not a babyface heel thing. So, with that being said, yeah, I didn't have a clue with that. But man, it that finish, Rollins doing the job, Rollins getting his heat back on Punk. They continue their brawl on Raw, and Cena went over. Punk and Rollins got further over with what they did. It was a perfect finish, man. WWE, for lack of a better cliche catchphrase, man, they have been firing on all cylinders. There's Russo told me he was looking at stories for, we do the Patreon show with him and Ben. He said he had to go 3 pages deep on certain wrestling news websites to find anything AEW related. Like nobody's talking about AEW.
I was going to say,
WWE
you weren't on the Wrestling Observer then. They have nothing but AEW news. Even during the pay-per-view. Right, this is on a Wrestling Observer. Anyway,
well,
Dave
for
Meltzer,
about
anyway.
50% of what they charge, you can get our Patreon. How's that?
Yeah, for God's sake, you get more entertainment from it. But yeah, they're the only website that continually puts way more AEW news out there than WWE. So comparing SmackDown news to Collision news, they will generally post more articles about AEW in the same time span.
If you were going to be fair, this is WrestleMania season, and AEW has their Wembley shows and other things that are featured that are their WrestleMania for the year, and it's fair to cover everything. That's just, to me, my antennas go up, and the word I think of is subsidized, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. So for the actual execution of the final segment itself then, so do you want me to set the scene? We're going to put a bit of B-roll in, I think, Chris, or he is anyway. Where do you want to take it from?
If you leave out, because Travis Scott is a whole nother thing, but it did affect the segment. It affected the segment. Outside of him, man, you couldn't have a more perfect segment. You had Cody out there, Cena out there, Rock out there. Finally asked the question, are you going to sell your soul? And used sparingly the go F yourself was exactly what a real person would say if you're asking them to, how should I say, compromise their morals, their ethics, their connection with the fans, become a corporate shill, a corporate champion. I think it's awesome too, because Cody looks like a corporate shill and a corporate champion with the pocket watch, the suits. So it's a good, and it's just such a anti-stereotype of what should be whatever. It's everything is flipped in a 180 sense, like you said about the WrestleMania push. The Cena over the top, campy cheerleader type stuff in the background, watching like a fan. He's been doing that for years. So we've been lulled into this false sense of babyface security and just unbelievable. Cena obviously has acting chops. Rock has acting chops. So to be able to have basically the Cody go F yourself Rock, the shaking hands with Cena, who's cheering like a cheerleader, the hug, and just the expression leaves Cena's face. Rock does that. We can get into the 2, the 3, all that stuff, because that's very deep and interesting right there. But does the throat cut. Cena comes back for a quick second and is like, yay, Cody. Dude. That's why we get into the business. That right there. Cena built up so much goodwill with the fans, so much faith. This is why when you turn a character babyface, like Kevin Owens, babyface and heel multiple times within one calendar year, that's why. And Kevin makes it work. But imagine if Kevin was a heel the entire time and turned babyface, or a babyface the entire time and then finally turned into the heel he is today. Kevin's work makes up for, how should I say, the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde complex that WWE has. This is what a heel turn should be, and this is why you should keep somebody a babyface or a heel for the longest amount of time, because then the turn's going to mean something. This is one of the best segments I've ever seen as far as a heel turn.
let's compare it to some other great segments. It's like unbelievable, like heel to. I was thinking of the Big Show, by the way, when you say flip flopping back and forth, because he's done it 40 times in his career.
Paul
Pretty
Orndorff
much.
was the original one. It took a lot of steam out of his character, constantly turning back and forth.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, he wasn't. For now, he wouldn't be constantly, but back then he was. I mean, he fired Bobby Heenan twice, didn't he? But Larry Zbyszko, Hulk Hogan in '96, of course, Steve Austin in 2001. I'm struggling to think of any other really major heel turns of that sort of magnitude, I guess, if you can think of any others.
Well, I'd say when The Rock became the corporate champion would be right up there.
Yeah, but he was only a good guy for 2 months, 3 months.
Well, the thing was that Rocky's never different either way. That's the key being a babyface or a heel. You need the truth and you need to still be what you are with a little bit of an adjustment or a tweak on it. I can't think of anything. Back in the day when I was a kid, I talked about watching NWA and Paul Jones' Army versus Jimmy Valiant. When Pistol Pez Watley became Shasta Watley, that was a pretty big deal. That was a pretty big deal. What was the other one? UWF had one with, I can't remember if it was something to have to do with Eddie Gilbert and then Terry Taylor turning heel because Terry Taylor was a white meat babyface back then. The biggest babyface turn I could think of after Magnum TA got into the car wreck, Nikita Koloff being the surprise partner for Dusty Rhodes in the cage. That was because everybody, including myself, they did it to where Dusty was coming to the ring and Nikita was like 5 steps behind him. And as a fan, I'm like, Nikita's going to jump you before you get in the cage. And then he got in the ring. There was that pause. People were rumbling. And then he went after the heels. And he was stiffing those heels every bit as much as he stiffed the babyface. That was probably the best babyface surprise turn that I ever saw with Nikita.
Another one for heel was Ole Anderson suckering Dusty Rhodes in for 18 months before everyone turned on him in the cage in the Omni, I think it was. Like
oh, yeah, and he suckered in Sting, remember? And all the horsemen turned on Sting that one time. But that was more like they were trying to peer pressure him into being kind of heelish. He said no, and then they jumped on him.
If you want another
Barry
one
Windham's turn, when he turned heel, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
Sorry, we can go on. There's a lot of good stuff out there.
I was going to say Randy Savage, WrestleMania 7, when he loses the retirement match, but he reunites with Liz. That was a great babyface.
But you know what that is? That is, he always loved Elizabeth on TV, on screen as characters. And by the way, they were divorced by that time when they did that whole thing too.
No, they divorced the year.
No, they were divorced.
They split the year after in '92.
I thought that they were apart when they did the deal by WrestleMania 7. I could have my timeline off.
No, because is it later that year they do the marriage?
Yeah, and they weren't together during the marriage made in heaven, and then they had the wedding reception where Jake brought the snake in, and they had the 2-camera shoot with that. Taker was there, I think, too.
Yeah.
So,
man,
hey, wrestling's awesome, man. You go back and you can watch stuff from different things, and this is definitely, we're bringing it all up because this Cena heel turn is something that people are going to be talking about 10 or 20 years from now.